Corey was tall for his age. In gym, he'd strut through the gray tunnels of the boys' locker room in his red bathing trunks and bright blonde hair. Wet his white towel under one of the silver shower heads, holding the dark towel away from his hip, twirling it into a rat's tail, whipping the heavy, wet tip of the towel against the naked boy's legs. He was feared. Each day in school, each boy kept track of where Corey was. Corey ruled the kids on the cul-de-sac. The parents knew nothing. Each night after dinner, the kids had to meet in the circular pavement at the center of the cul-de-sac. Then Corey would bring them into the woods, but not too far. Pull out a pack of matches, or squeeze a halved green lime over his fingers, make each boy sniff, then have the boys pull down their pants, even their underpants, and lie on top of each other like cordwood. By sunset, everyone was on a bus back to the hotel, driving alongside the ocean, orange sky, silhouettes of tall palm trees growing at an angle in the beach sand, when the bus's tall black wheels ran over, on a narrow road, a dead limb. The driver ground gears, reverse, drive, rocking the bus, a straw hat falling off the metal tubing racks overhead, then shut off the motor. Without a word, he grabbed the vertical knob for the bus's double doors, yanking the knob counterclockwise, opening the doors, then hopped down and out into the growing darkness of the road. He needed to find a place to spend the night. Since it was December, temperature in the 30s, he wasn't concerned about bear, but there were gray wolves in this area of Montana. He didn't want to wake up to them circling, nostrils huffing vapor. He was halfway up a steep path along an outcropping of rock. Off the side of the trail, past his left boot, he could see down, past the tops of thousands of trees to the lowland foothills, and beyond that, the ghostly glitter of towns. To his right, the rock face rose 200 feet. Stepping backwards on the path, as close to its edge as he felt comfortable getting, with a 50-pound pack strapped to his back, he spied what looked like a thin ledge 30 feet up. That would have to do. Miles had the back of the wagon up, pulling out our air tanks by their canvas straps, setting them down carefully, clink and clink, on the hard black tar. He looked up at my approach and smiled, his black-rimmed glasses matching his straight, combed-back black hair. An old-fashioned face, a square's face, a face in which you can no longer see what the child's face must have looked like. Middle-aged like me, only a few months past the divorce he didn't want. We didn't know each other well yet, so instead of just smiling back, I said something about how warm it was, looking not at him, but around the lot. A group leaning against the back of the car were staring unemotionally, as we often do in part of a group, at a lone male walking to his fan. Jill looked at the agent's back, then at Philip, then back at the agent. How big a frog? She looked back at Philip again, letting out a giggle. I mean, supposedly pretty big. How big? His shoulders lifted in his overcoat again. What happened was, last year we rented this place, and the couple living here, they've claimed the frog tried to get in. He raised his eyebrows. See, the thing is, that pond starts to thaw come spring, and you start hearing all these little frogs come back to life. Frogs can freeze over the winter, and when spring comes back, they thaw out and go right on living. Did you know that? Well, with this other couple, they were middle-aged. They'd hear the little frogs start to come back to life each night while they lay in bed with their windows open. that trill or call or whatever it is frogs give out. More and more little frogs thawing all the time, until it got quite noisy at night. But it was a pleasant noisiness, a country noisiness. And then one night they heard this very loud croak start up. The big one had thawed. Took him so long to thaw because he was so big. Well, every night after that they'd hear fewer and fewer of the little frogs chirping, because supposedly the big frog was sliding in his belly across the bottom of the pond, down in the green mud, down in the wavy shadows, big and cold, eating them all. Until it reached night when they didn't hear any little frogs at all, because they supposedly all got eaten by then. So the wife says to her husband, "I wonder what he's going to eat now." He put both hands on his side of the counter, looking at her blouse to see if there were a name tag, but there wasn't. "I'm here to pick up my order." He closed his eyes. "It's a tuxedo." "Do you have your receipt?" He felt a little annoyed she hadn't smiled back. Wasn't that a general courtesy? He pulled his leather wallet out of his pants pocket, put the folded over receipt in her outstretched hand. She activated the long line of plastic-wrapped clothes, dresses and bed sheets and suits wobbling around on an overhead track. He didn't want to stare at her while she was causing the clothes to slowly train around, so he looked down at the counter. After a long while, she stopped the advance, read the ticket number on a swaying woman's jumper, then the ticket number on a pair of shorts next to the jumper. She looked over at him, short bangs, plain face. "It's not here." Incredibly, she walked back over to her map, head bent, finger tracing a route. Mason watched her study the map for a moment, realized she was going to keep looking at it. She had finished trying to locate his tuxedo. He looked to his left, his right, raised his chin. "Yoo-hoo." She looked up from where her finger was holding a spot on the map, not defiant, but she looked up silently, not saying anything. "And?" Her black-eyed brows drew together. "Excuse me?" "My tuxedo's not where it's supposed to be, and what are you going to do now to locate it?" "Could you come back next week?" No, I couldn't possibly come back next week. I need the tuxedo tonight, now, for a dinner at the mayor's. They sat in chairs at the rear of the property, under the tall trees, teeth pulling meat off the bones, wiping the fingers on paper napkins decorated with sailboats. There was a pile of empty beer bottles in front of their shoes. After they ate and remained seated, feet spread apart, everyone pretty drunk, Brent asked Charlie if he were divorced. Charlie lowered his chin to his chest, suppressing a burp, widowed. Missy, sitting in the wooden chair next to him, put her hand on his beefy shoulder. So sad. Charlie reached into the big white styrofoam cooler by Brent's knees, lifted out another beer, uncapped it. She had cancer. Missy squeezed his shoulder. "My sister had cancer. Of what?" Charlie made a dismissive gesture. "Liver." Brent, eyebrows raised as he tried to peel off in one piece the wet paper label of his beer bottle, nodded. "That's pretty common, the liver, to have cancer in it." The Cocker Spaniel's head twisted around on its shoulder, floppy ears, moist brown eyes staring up, blinking, tongue out. You reach for the aluminum latch. Your father's hand stretches down, pushes against the door, keeping it shut. "I forbid you to bring that dog inside." "At least let me get the ants off him." He snorts. As soon as you brush them off, they'll start climbing on him again. The next morning, Tess is sobbing. She pulls you by your big hand over to the back door. You don't want to look out, but you do for her sake, so she doesn't have to hold whatever she saw all to herself. The dog is dead, mouth frozen, ants crawling in and out of its eyes. Watching it being carried away underground, one little upraised red dot at a time, you notice a metal tag around his neck. He used to belong to someone. Look at the fucking dollar. You look at it dumbly, turning it over to look at the back to make certain Nuggles knows you're doing what he told you to do. Your tears are falling on the big green pyramid with the weird eye on top. It's an ordinary dollar, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What a fucking crybaby. Go over there and thumbtack it to the wall, you worthless pussy. You jerk your feet over to the white wall, afraid you're going to pass out, holding the dollar in your right hand, the thumbtack Tom gave you in your left. When you get to the wall, you hold the dollar up in one hand, the tack in the other. Tack it to the fucking wall. What the fuck are you doing? You see your hand shaking as you press the dollar against the wall, George Washington staring at you. Your left hand moves across miles of air to the green curve above the crosshatch portrait. You've got the tack at an angle, but you're too afraid to try to straighten it out, for fear it'll pop out of your slippery fingers. Plus, it's in your left hand rather than the right. What were you thinking? The tack is actually laying sideways against the dollar, but you try to push it in that way, afraid to straighten it out, and wind up sliding the sideways tack across the top of the portrait, scratching the arched green cobwebs, getting more and more scared, until the point finally catches and you're able to push the tack in. You step back trembling. I did it. Knuckles stomps over, snorting. Gee, you did it, kid. You actually managed to push a thumbtack into the wall. His lips turn down in an ugly grimace behind the breathing sod in his red mask. Look at this, Tom. We finally found someone who knows how to use a thumbtack. Well, suck my cock and spit out piss. Tom steps up to the wall, leaning his crew-cut gray head forward, playful smile on his face, as he minutely examines the shiny blue head of the tack against the pale green cobwebs. He raises his eyebrows, grunts. Knuckles shoves you back from the wall, pointing to the spot on the floor where he wants you to stand. Tom, what do you do when you get mad? Tom turns sideways, makes a fist, throws his arm forward, the fist hitting the dollar bill with a wall-shaking impact. He pulls his fist back. The dollar is gone. 4 quarters pop off the wall. Tom leans into your vision. His face is lined. His pale lips are grinning. You smell spearmint. I pulled my punch. I could have made dimes. Once I got really angry and made pennies, the darn things rolled all over the place. If somebody in my employees screws up and Tom gets mad, I let him punch the screw up and make change. Get the lesson, kid? Yes, sir. Knuckles holds up a finger. Now you get to see what I do when I get mad.